Hi, everybody. Welcome once again to our daily positivity bias inspiration for a few minutes, for 10, 15 minutes. I'd like once again to welcome Esty over here, who will be once again sharing the daily thought of positivity bias. Thank you, Esty.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Thanks for tuning back in whenever you do. So we're going to start with a question. And here's the question. So we've been discussing how we can develop this positivity bias. Yesterday, the rabbi spoke about how focusing on how we have to focus on good, even though naturally we focus on the negative. But really, if you look at the world at large, positivity makes sense. And there's so much good, and we can even increase the good and lots of good stuff. So today's question is essentially, what's the deal with this world? What was God thinking when he made this world? Was it meant to be a good place? Essentially, is this world good? And if it is, what's up with the pain, right? Like, we can focus on the positive, but today our question is, are we just focusing on the positive, but essentially this world's pretty crummy and filled with pain? Or is this world essentially good? And if it is, what was God's plan when he included the pain in the plan? So to answer the question, we are going to go back to a period of time where asking if this world is essentially good and what's up with the pain was pretty high up there in everyone's mind. The year is 1951. Location is 770 Eastern Parkway, Brooklyn, New York. The Chabad community, the Jewish community, had gathered together to welcome their new Rebbe, Rebbe Menachem Mendel Schneerson. He was taking on the mantle of leadership. It was a humble gathering. It was the remnant of a once glorious dynasty that had numbered in the hundreds of thousands, but this was what was left of them after the war. And here they were waiting for guidance from their new Rebbe, how they were to live in this new land, to start new lives after literally living through catastrophe. They had known an ugly world. They're waiting for their marching orders. So, what was the teaching that the Rebbe shared in his inaugural address? He expounded on a verse from Shir Hashirim, the Song of Songs, and the verse starts like this: Basi Legani, I have come to my garden. And how the Rebbe interpreted this verse was answering the question of if this world is an essentially good place. Basi Legani, I've come to my garden, is God referring to the world that he has created. He refers to it as a garden. So what the Rebbe was sharing with his community, with us, is that the world is not a cruel, meaningless place, just mass and energy warping time, space meaninglessly. Rather, it's God's garden. It's his finest creation, the place that he's chosen to dwell. So realizing and knowing that this world is God's garden, which means it's a godly, beautiful environment, is to know that we have the power, despite what this physical world may present to us, we have the power to define and influence our experiences and reality based on our perception. It's actively seeking out the positive aspect or opportunity in a given situation. It's believing in the ultimate goodness of God and knowing that he's constantly involved in his world. Really, it's not seeing the ruin, but a temple to be rebuilt. So this is what we've been discussing. It is a positivity bias, but it's a little deeper than just searching out the good. It's realizing that this world is God's garden, which means that essentially it is good. This world is a beautiful, godly place. Knowing this and really developing this positivity bias enables us to experience a realer and more beautiful world. Now, it's important to note that when the Rebbe shared this with his congregation, with us, this teaching was not denying the terrible pain and suffering that the people gathered, including the Rebbe, had experienced. It was compelling us, however, to focus on the good, and we don't ignore the darkness, rather, we banish it through light, which is something we've also discussed before. So our premise here is that essentially we're living in a good world. God created this world for goodness so that we can experience goodness. It's filled with goodness. It's filled with godliness. It's filled with light. It's a garden. And it takes definite effort to develop a positivity bias that enables us to see that and experience that. But this is our premise. This is our reality. Now, we still haven't answered our second question that we started off with. So we started off, is the world essentially good? We're saying that the Torah teaches us that yes, this world is essentially good. The second question we had was, okay, that's nice, but in my reality, I definitely experience pain. There is tragedy. What's up with that? What's up with the pain? So to answer this, we are going to take a look in the Talmud. And what? Sorry. Okay, let the rabbi know. Bye, Ophelia. Sorry, everyone. So to answer this question, we are going to take a look in the Talmud, and it's actually a conversation that happened at the beginning of time. It's told in cryptic form in the Talmud. We're going to expand on it. This is a conversation that happened on the first Wednesday of creation, when the moon and the sun and the planets and stars were created. Moon comes into creation, and she's shining in the sky, and she notices the sun shining with her. And it says that God had created the sun and moon of equal size. And the moon looks over at the sun, and then she turns to God and she complains. She says, "You created two queens to rule in the sky. Like, what's up with that? How are we both there's one crown. How are we both meant to wear the crown?" God's like, "Oh, okay, interesting. So if you're right, there can't be one crown for two heads. So moon, I'm going to ask you to shrink, to make yourself small." And the moon is made small, and now she's really annoyed because she's like, "What? This is what happens? You complain and you get shrunk for it? Like, I was just pointing out a detail." She's really not happy. And it says how God goes on to try and appease the moon. He says, "Don't worry, you're small, but here, look, the night sky is filled with stars to keep you company. Even more than that, the sun shines brightly, but the Jewish people actually will keep their calendar according to your cycle. They'll keep it according to the moon cycle." But the moon is just like, I don't know, this isn't what I was looking for. You shrank me because I complained. I'm not pleased with it. Then God says, "Well, this is my reality. There needs to be a hierarchy. There will be a great sun and a small moon. The world has a hierarchy." And at this point, the moon gets really frustrated because she's like, "Oh, there has to be a hierarchy. So you set me up. You were waiting for me to complain so you could put this hierarchy in place," which is apparently the natural way of things. So this has been a setup, and God is trying to appease her again. Now, obviously, this conversation, this argument that the moon is having is something that Jewish people, Moses did, our grandmothers did. We argue as Jews with God, and he seems to enjoy it because there's always this back and forth. So the moon accuses God of setting her up. She's been a victim of this hierarchy. And then God tries to show her how it's all relative, really. From God's perspective, is the moon reflecting the light of the sun, or it's all relative? From God's perspective, it works the other way. Time, space, it's relative. And the moon is like, "Great, I'm so glad you can see it both ways. But in my reality, in my forward paradigm, I am lesser. And what you're saying is that from your perspective, God, you don't even feel my pain because you see it both ways. You don't see me as lesser, but you don't. Does that mean you're not experiencing my pain? So God says, no, I feel your pain. And he turns time forward real quick to show the moon some real compensation. He takes the moon to Egypt. They're shining over the pyramids, and God calls out to Moshe, and he says to Moshe, this is the moon. She is going to be the Jewish mascot. The Jewish people will be a small people. They will wax and wane, grow and experience pain. She is your mascot, and you will follow your calendar according to her, and you will bless her every month. There's all this compensation that God's getting in for the moon, so she doesn't feel so bad about her situation. And then the conversation kind of veers. The moon is really starting to see this whole hierarchical reality that God has in place as like she's just not okay with it, and she keeps arguing. She wants to know why there are those who give and those who get. Remember, this is the beginning of time. She can question whatever she wants. She wants to know why there are those who give and those who get. And God tells her how those who get really are giving to those who are giving. It goes both ways. Again, it's relative. And there's this whole explanation. And really, when you think about it, it's all these explanations that we get. And they're very beautiful explanations of how things that seem not so fantastic in our world really are very beautiful. So, for example, someone who gives really gets so much goodness. But the moon isn't buying it. She's just like, 1 second. You're God. You just put this world into place. You could have created whatever system you wanted to, but you've chosen to create a system where there is a hierarchy, where there are those who experiences pain, those who need to get, those who are above seemingly and who give. Why did you include suffering and pain in the mix? Why? You just created this world. You're God, right? You could have done whatever you wanted to. This is the point where in the conversation, God calls Moses back. And he says to Moses, the moon has a complaint. It's an understandable complaint. And I'm asking you, Moses, to bring on the first of the month, when you bless the moon, you're going to bring a sin offering for me, for God, because I have caused the moon pain, and I have included pain and suffering in this world. So Moses gets on board at this point, and he's like, we're bringing a sin offering for you, so you are apologizing for including pain in the mix. But then, God, you're God, right? Why did you include in the mix? Moses has the same question. God's like, you too, you as well. Why is everyone asking questions? And the moon's back in. She's like, you could have revealed your essence without the bad. And Hashem, God says, I'm not answering that question. And Moshe's like, come on, tell us why. You've told me everything else. Tell me why you've included pain and suffering in the mix. And God says, no, this I can't tell you. But Moshe is persistent. So God says, Moshe, if I tell you why a good and beneficent God has created a world with suffering, and I tell you what it's all for, I tell you the reason, I tell you the cause, I tell you why there is pain, how would you feel? What would you do then? Moshe responds, well, if I knew, I guess I wouldn't feel so bad about it. And God responds to that precisely why I will not tell you, because I never want you to be complacent. I don't want you to tolerate the darkness. You must fight it with every sinew of your flesh, with all of your capacity, with all of your soul, until you redeem every spark of light, until you can bring sweetness to the most bitter of places, until you have not left any corner of my world untouched with acts of kindness and compassion. I will not tell you why, so you do not stop fighting the darkness, and you do not accept, so that you never accept the pain. Because until the time when Mashiach comes, and this world and where the good is revealed, you will not accept the pain. And until that time, you will bring a sin offering for me. So this conversation between the moon and Moses and God that's brought in the Talmud really tells us what our response to pain and suffering is. So first we have this really important premise that this world is good. It was created for good. It's God's garden. And we know that we have to focus on the good and we have to develop positivity bias. But we also need to know, I think it enables us to truly develop a positive outlook on this world, is knowing what we do when we encounter something that feels evil, something that is very painful, or specifically other people's pain, how to look at other people's pain. We're not expected to embrace the pain, to see it as good. We're meant to do quite the opposite. We are meant to fight the pain. We're meant to turn to God and say, why? What's the deal with this? We're meant to bring light to banish the darkness, and at the same time realize that the darkness is something that is painful, and God didn't expect us not to experience the pain, but that essentially this world is good, and we should be successful in focusing on the good and bringing light into this world, and really experiencing positivity. We've gone way over time, so I hope you all enjoyed. We'll see you tomorrow at 2 p.m. again. L'chaim to you all. Hope everyone is healthy. Again, prayers for everyone who is in pain and needs health. And we will see you, God willing, tomorrow. Thanks for tuning in. See ya.